Hello everybody and welcome to the Uilleann piping tips and tricks tutorial. My name's Jason Rouse. I've been playing pipes for over 21 years now, and over the course of my piping career I've come across a lot of little nuggets of wisdom from various pipe makers and players which have helped me along the way, and hopefully I'll be able to impart some of this knowledge to you today and over the course of this video. Okay, let's get started. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the tutorial and hit the subscribe button. It really helps out in a big way. Okay, let's go. Okay, first things first. If you have any notes that are particularly sharp, you can use a bit of sticky tape like this just to bring them into tune. It's probably worth pointing out that it affects the bottom octave more than it affects the top octave. So, I mean, ideally, you don't want any of this on your chanter, but it can help you out in a sticky situation if you need to. Most people just use this sort of thing here. It's a just electrical tape, but it leaves a bit of a residue and you'll have to like swap it out every once in a while. A lot of pipers recommend this stuff. This is bondage tape, and basically it just sticks to itself instead, and it gives you a cleaner seal on the nuts. Probably a better, more permanent solution is to just put a bit of wax on the inside. So you can see on this one here, I've got some wax on in here and again in here, just keeps it a bit more, you know, a bit more of a sort of permanently in tune if you need to. You can also do that with regulator notes as well. If you've got like some note that's ridiculously sharp, and every time you try to put a bit of material up the bore to fix it, it pops or whatever. So that could be a good use for that. This is the wax that I recommend for that. It's just it's sealing wax. You can get it from like arts and crafts shops. I'm quite lucky in Cardiff. We've got a lovely big castle, and they sell it opposite the castle as sort of, you know, make your own stamps, sort of parchment type stuff. It's pretty good. I've used that as well to sort of plug a hole on this one with a bit of cork in there as well. So yeah, kind of useful wax. Nice and sticky, easy to use compared to the sort of beeswax if you're using that instead. Speaking of wax, this is the sort of standard beeswax stuff that you can get, and it's really hard, really not great stuff for hemping up joints or that sort of thing. What I like to do is just mix it up, boil it up with a bit of Vaseline, stick it in a bag or whatever. Whenever it cools down, you'll have like a lovely sticky sort of better version of beeswax, and this is quite good just for like running your string through if you need to. I just got it here in a leather pad. Yeah, much better stuff than what you get with the standard beeswax. A lot softer to use. I actually prefer this stuff here, which is what you get from Ted Anderson sells this. It's like shoemaker's wax. I've got a lot of the stuff, and it's the most like what I would have used years and years ago, like the Brown's thermal wax. And this stuff is really hard and really like tricky to use, but what you need to do is just like break a little bit off or whatever. You keep it in your hand for like, I don't know, like a minute, 2 minutes, whatever, and it'll soften up. And then whenever you run your thread through it, it works a lot better. And yeah, really great stuff for those tricky joints. And it also smells amazing. In terms of like threading joints, I suppose the most common stuff you get out here is this sort of, I guess, substitute hemp. It's not really good. Often you can buy it like pre-waxed as well, but I try and stay away from this stuff as it's it can like clump up as well, and that's just not great to use. I much prefer this kind of stuff that you get from Ted Anderson as well. So he does 2 different weights of this here. This is yeah, like the proper like traditional stuff. This is the heavier one here, so you know, quite strong fibers. And then he does like a skinnier version of it as well, which is really cool. Yeah, so I much prefer those. I know a lot of makers will just use like string or like fine linen thread. Really just a case of playing around and seeing what works for you, I guess. Under no circumstances though should you be using this sort of stuff here. This is PTFE tape, plumber's tape. Yeah, it's kind of like, I'll show you in a second, and maybe one or two uses for it, but you really shouldn't be using this on the threads of the joints in your pipes, because it tears or it gets stuck and you can't move things around. Yeah, just don't use this stuff at all. Your pipe makers will thank you for it. Another alternative, which you don't hear a lot of people talking about, is this stuff here. Pop it up on here so we can see first. This is silicone grease. It's used for like motorbikes and cars and stuff. Comes out as like a little clear material there. Let's see if I can focus on that. Yeah, there we are. So it's a little bit gooey, and what you do is you can just pop it on your joints like that, and then that just keeps them really airtight. Yeah, and they're kind of easy to move around as well if you need to. The bad thing about this one is you'll have to replace it every couple of months because it does dry out and then it doesn't really work. Probably always a good idea as well is to just like ask your pipe maker what they prefer on their sets, because they might not be the biggest fan of, you know, one or two different ways of doing it, and they probably have like a specific way that works with those pipes. Like I use this only really on the concert set, or on maybe like an older set of pipes where there's like a really weird joint. Maybe the actual joint itself has gone a bit oval instead of circular, and it just helps make a tighter seal. So yeah, double check with your pipe maker and see what they recommend for that. I'll just do a quick demo here as well of maybe starting a joint. A little trick that you can do with that. Nice and easy. A little bit of Pritt stick here. You can get this sort of stuff anywhere. It's just basically like a water-based paint you use in like schools and stuff for like sticking stuff down. Just find the end of your thread and just run a wee bit through it. And then whenever you need to attach it, you can just pop it on and then wind it around or whatever. Nice and easy. Speaking of thread, I know a lot of pipers will overwrap the top of the chanter towards this end of it, so whenever it sits in the bag, it's nice and snug. But it also gives you a bit of hemp that you can sort of pull off if you need to, if you're like stuck in a situation, like maybe you're like in the middle of a session or a gig or something and the valve blows out of your bellows. You can just unwind it and just grab a little bit off, and that's a nice easy little bit of hemp there that you can just use. As far as little fixes for the chanter, you'll see a lot of papers with a load of stuff up the bottom here. So a bit of paper works, or I've seen people use silicone O-rings. I normally prefer this sort of stuff here. It's basically like an old credit card or a store card or whatever. Just cut a little V out of it and then stick that up in, and the pressure will keep it in. You can experiment with different weights and different amounts and different lengths. Essentially what it does is, if you're having trouble maintaining bottom D, like a hard bottom D, a little bit of material up there will make the tone hole a little bit smaller, and it'll give you a better low D. It also gives you a bit of a sharper bottom D as well, so you can also use it for tuning. Just trying to make sure it doesn't go too far out of what it normally should be. So what a lot of people use to bring sort of older chanters in tune as well, or chanters that are quite short, is a rush that goes up the middle of the chanter. And essentially what this is just a piece of wire. This one here, I've just got a guitar string, and basically you sort of measure how far up you want it to go to bring those notes in tune. So if your back D is fine but the rest of the notes are a bit too sharp, you could just chop it just below the back D, and then that'll bring the rest of them in tune. I guess in the old days they would use something like this. So this is just an actual rush that you can get. Again, quite handy living in Cardiff. I've got really good access to this kind of stuff, just down the bay or whatever if I need to. So yeah, just a bit of rush, you know, and just stick it up in there if you need to. You can always like fold it back on itself, stick it up the bottom that way. You can wrap some stuff around it to, you know, to affect a certain note. again, this is the kind of stuff that's really useful, excuse me, really useful for like regulator tuning as well, which I would have done a lot in the older days using this kind of thing. I know that Leo Rossum's chanters are typically sharp of modern concert pitch, so something like this will bring it right up into where it needs to be for playing with other musicians if you need to. Or keep it in E flat. E flat's pretty cool as well. Okay, as far as tuning regulators, I know a lot of people use like sticky, like blue tack or that sort of thing. You probably shouldn't do that. Chat with your pipe maker and see if that's what they recommend. I know there's certain brands of blue tack that are stickier than others, so more likely to get stuck inside the bore, which would be an absolute nightmare to dig out again if you need to. But this is just, I think this is just a piece of elder or something that I've just picked. But any sort of like twig with a pith that you can sort of hollow out works, and essentially you can just chop it to size and stick it in there, and that'll help tune certain notes. Yeah, and then you just use the pistons to sort of push it in and out. I know some people use ballpoint pens for this sort of thing. So essentially you can, instead of using a bit of wood, a bit of natural material, you can use a ballpoint pen. So you can hollow this out and then cut this part to size, or cut the inside, the ink part to size, and then that can come up and down as well. Just a couple of different options there. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you are stuck, speak with your maker and see if they can recommend using blue tack or not. Don't tell them I said that. And again, if you are having issues with tuning regulators, you can also always put like, where are we here? You can always put like a little bit of wax on the inside there to make, to make that note play a little bit better. And the PTFE tape from before, it's not entirely useless. I do quite like using it on regulators sometimes. So that's a regulator reed that's like probably a little bit too loud for the set. So just wrapping it up really lightly in PTFE tape will just bring the overall volume of it down. Just make sure it isn't interfering with the tone or anything as well. And as far as regulators go, there are a couple of little hacks that you can do as well. This is just a bit of cork on the notes, and you can see there where some notes I don't want them to come down as much as others. And some notes need a bit more space to like vent properly. You can also use this to like tune notes if you've got some notes that are particularly difficult. Because essentially what you're doing is you're like half holding the note, as you would on the chanter. So you're making it a bit flatter than it needs to be, just with a bit of cork on there. Just stick it on with some of this stuff here. This is just Yoo-hoo glue. You can get this anywhere really. Yeah, nice and easy to take off. You don't want anything permanent on there. And yeah, I know some pipers as well who'll stick some cork on top of the keys to make them easier to hit. One of the things that you can do is change the height of the pad. So adding an extra little bit of leather on there will make the pad a little bit higher, so the key itself comes down a little bit. I find that quite useful. And yeah, here's an example of that. So you can see this big G key on here where I've added an extra layer of padding because I don't want it. The actual key itself is quite proud from the other notes, and it makes it a bit trickier to play the to play the bottom chords on the baritone and tenor. Well, I don't have that problem up here with the B, so you can see the B still has like a single little bit there. He's got some cork underneath it as well to help with the travel on that one. Yeah, it's just something you can play around with if you're not sure. Yeah, make sure you ask your pipe maker, about that as well. If you want to make it easier for adjusting reeds and keeping reeds in tune, there's a couple of other things as well that you can do. I've got this on a regulator reed, but the same applies to like a chanter reed, I guess. You can make a little reed seat just out of a little bit of brass tubing, and that'll just be, I guess, telescopic to the size of the reed that you're putting into it, and that makes it easier to pull it out and in if you need to. And just at the top here, I've got some little blue tack on here just to keep everything in place, so I don't accidentally move it or whatever. It just finds it keeps it a bit more steady. And you can see with this one as well, I've got quite a chunk of cork here just to help with the travel on that D key, so it just doesn't have to travel as far down, which makes it easier to hit those bottom two chords. I suppose the other benefit of it as well is it makes them a bit quieter. The keys aren't hitting the wood each time, so you don't get that clink. Although I do miss that. I quite like hearing the sound of keys, going off and on. But yeah, I suppose easier to play is probably better in the long run. As far as bellows connections goes, a lot of people use these ones here. This is sold by Uilleann. It's a little rubber connection, rubber hose essentially. I don't like this one personally because, well, for one, it's like a fixed sort of length, and pipes really should be like tailored. You need to have a set of pipes fit you like a suit. Like it's got to be. You got to play around with it until you find the right position of the bag, the right position of the bellows, all that sort of stuff. And something like this doesn't really help with that because it's a single, it's one sort of size. So I guess it doesn't really work for everyone. Also, I don't like how flexible it is. I much prefer this kind of thing here. This is just a piece of car radiator hose, and I've got different sort of lengths of this for different sets because some sets need to be sat further back, some sets need to be further forward. I've just cut this at an angle at the side just to help with the fit into the bellows the right way. Yeah, much better. Nice and cheap, nice and easy to get your hands on as well. Just get it online or in like a car parts shop, Halfords, that sort of job. Yeah, nice and handy, and it's quite sturdy as well. So there's a bit of give in it, but it really does keep the bag in place while you're playing. And I guess as the bellows, well, I guess the valves in general connection goes, you can make your own valves quite easily out of a bit of leather. That should be fine for most things. Maybe a little bit of Vaseline on the inside just to keep it, keep a nice tight seal and keep the leather supple. If you're finding that the valves keep making noises or they're letting air out, you can also put another bit. You can just cut another little bit of leather and stick it at the bottom of it, and that will bring it down for a little bit of extra weight. Or you can use the sealing wax on the back of it and give a bit more weight. Or one time I even had like a little 1 cent, 1 cent euro coin just to give it a bit more, a bit more weight on there. And some makers make slightly different versions of these with like a bit of metal that comes out and then wraps around, and then the valve is reverse sprung into it. So there's other options in there that you can play around with and see what works. So this works for the valve here in the bag, but you can also use it on the valve inside the bellows as well. Those of you with drones out there, it might be worth playing around with the travel on the drone switch. So most of them you can just unscrew them, and then that brings the drone switch out a bit, or screw them in a bit more. There we go. Basically what that does is it gives you more of distance between where the drones come out, where the air goes into the drones, into the stock, and a tighter distance. So if you tighten that up, you get less air going through the drones, which can also make them a bit easier to play, can change the pitch, can sometimes make them steadier. So have a little play around with that, and it's something not a lot of people really experiment with, but can definitely give you some good results. Also, if your drone switch is a bit stiff like this one, you can use a bit of Vaseline in there, or what I'd probably recommend more is cork grease. So you can get that just from like any sort of music shop, and what it'll do is just give you like a nice easy drone switch that's airtight and just sort of flows nice and freely. Good stuff. Speaking of drones, what you can do is, if you have a drone that isn't working, you can sort of pull the lip up a little bit like that, see if that helps bring it back to life, or just lightly roll it between your fingers, and that normally gives it a bit more, brings it back to life if it's already died. A lot of reed makers, will use bit of blue tack on here, or a bit of the sort of like red sealing wax that I've got on here before. Not a lot of people do this, but this is what I've got in here is it's a piece of silicone tubing that I've just cut the size, and basically that gives you a nice movable bridle. You don't have to like untie stuff and tie it back on again. This is just an old rubbish reed that I probably made years ago, I think. But yeah, just to give you an idea of, you know, moving the bridle up and down nice and easy with that. That's the silicone stuff there. So it's just a bit of silicone tubing. You can buy pre-cut stuff as well, like little O-rings. But yeah, just a little bit like that will last you a long time. Yeah, just chop it off to whatever sort of size you need it to be, and then it sort of expands out as it goes over the reed. Nice and easy. Speaking of terrible reeds, if you've got a really bad chanter reed, like this one here, this is just a cheap Pakistan made chanter reed. It's even got a chip in the corner. Sometimes they can make a really good reg reed. So this is what I've got in my bass regulator on my D set, and it works really, really well, believe it or not. Yeah, it just goes to show, you know, it's not really what the reed looks like. I've seen some terrible dogs, you know, of reeds with the corners all cut in the wrong bits and made out of terrible material and stuck together with sticky tape, and they sound amazing. So it's yeah, it's not what the reed looks like, folks. It's how it plays at the end of the day. Yeah, it's probably worth pointing out as well that it's a good idea if you've got a reed that's a bit leaky on the sides, you can seal it with a little bit of wax just down the side of it. I know a lot of people use like varnish as well. Like if you've got a really good reed that you've just accidentally smashed and there's a crack down the middle, a bit of varnish down the side of it, or down the middle of it, sorry, that could bring it back to life. You never know. I've also got this stuff here. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like it's not nail varnish. It's like some kind of glue, and basically just like joins the two bits together. So sorry, I'm not sure what that one is, but varnish will do the job as well. Go for the clear stuff, don't go for the crazy colors unless you want to. And I suppose another thing on the regs, with the pistons, if they're a bit stiff, you can always use a bit of cork grease on them as well to help keep them where they need to be. I also recommend, if you've got like a really good reed going in the regulators but it's not quite in tune, a little bit of you see I've just quite badly put in, but a little bit of cork in the bottom, maybe about, on this one I've got probably this much here, that shortens the bore of the regulator. So you could try that as well. Sometimes that'll bring certain notes in tune. So probably not something you got to do much these days, but if you've got a really old reed that's got really mucky or dirty inside, maybe from the old days when people used to smoke in sessions and it would build up a tar and that sort of thing, what you can do is you can put a little bit of paper in between the lips of the reed and then just press on a little bit and then just pull through. And if you do that a couple of times, it just brings out all the gunk that's inside there without having to take the reed apart and clean it up that way. If you're going to be polishing your pipes, probably a good idea to stay away from abrasives like Brasso or that sort of thing. I recommend this stuff here, Cape Cod metal polishing cloths. These are really, really good. You get them on Amazon, or in the UK they sell them through like Lakeland, which is where I normally get them from. Keep your pipes nice and shiny. The shine lasts a lot longer as well than, you know, using something like Brasso, and it doesn't damage them. So yeah, use this here stuff here instead. Give them wiped down with the cloths, and then just with like a microfiber cloth, go over the top of it again a couple of times. Make sure you shine them up nice and well. As far as if you want to go the extra step, this stuff here is pretty cool here. Renaissance wax. They use it in museums and stuff for keeping like old instruments and stuff nice and clean. Yeah, if you want to like wax down your instruments and prolong the life of them, this is probably the best stuff that you can do. It smells really nice too. If you play a flat set or you're having trouble reaching the bottom notes on the regulators, it might be worth investing in something like this. So this is just a strap that just goes around the stock of the belt, the stock of the pipes here. You can put them in at this end here. I prefer it around on this set at least, just up under where the stock joins into the bag. This is just a piece of leather, leather shoelace that I just got from the local market. Nice and easy, just tie it up. Make sure it's the right the right size, for what you're working on. Yeah, that's pretty much all it is. It's probably also worth pointing out that the length of the chanter should make the length of the neck on the bag makes a big difference. So I sometimes play this set as a 3/4 set, and when I do that, I find that the length of the neck on the bag isn't long enough, and it's quite handy just to have something like this. This is just a little bit of metal that slots in, gives you a little bit of an extension on there. This one's quite fancy, but in old sets, what I've done, I've just bought a bit of nickel silver and sort of telescopic nickel silver, and just used a bit of hemp to keep it in place, nice and easy. Gives you a bit more of an extension on there and makes it easier to play. Okay, so here's like a little bellows hack that a lot of people do. You probably see a few pipers doing this. At the very end of the arm band, stick a key ring in there, and what that does is it just whenever you're taking it off, it just keeps it in place and makes it easier to put back on again. Nice and simple one. I actually don't really like having this sort of, I suppose it's the modern style belt on the bellows, which sort of straps your arm, locks it in place. I'll just show you quickly what I use, and maybe this will inspire someone else, or maybe inspire people just to try this out and see how they get on. So what I've got here with this one is I've just got a piece of string, a piece of fabric, and I've tied it in and around the hinge on the bellows, and I've just made a little bit of leather to go around here. And basically this is kind of like what they would have done in the old days, except that it would have been stitched in with the leather instead. And I find with this one here, what it does just gives your arm a lot more like space to move around, which makes it a lot easier to hit those bottom notes on the bellows. Basically, yeah, rather than being completely locked in on the instrument, you're free to move around essentially, which certainly works for those. It works for me, and it works especially on those like bigger sets. Try it. Oh, and one more on the bellows. This doesn't really apply to me because I don't really live in a hot country and I don't have any issues with humidity. It's very wet over here. But what a lot of people do is, if you're stuck in a warm country, or if you're playing somewhere that's unusually warm in the middle of the desert or something like that, just cut out a bit of fabric and just like attach it over the input valve on your bellows, and then just put a bit of water on it, or wet the fabric. And what that'll do is it'll bring moist air into the set. You don't want to put water in your bellows or anything like that. You just want the air that's going into it a bit more humid than what it normally would be. Okay, folks, I think that's everything so far. Maybe if I come up with some other ones or remember some other little hacks, I might do another one, a little follow-up episode. But that's probably enough for today. If you like the video, don't forget the usual stuff. If you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, really helps out. Check out my other videos. I'm doing some piping, some playing, and if you like my piping, I've got a CD out as well, which was recorded on my old-fashioned cassette player, which you can get on my website. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.